everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday afternoon, evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. My name is McKaylee. I'm with Tattered Cover Bookstore. And first and foremost, I want to start this off by saying thank you. Thank you for supporting local independent bookstores. Thank you for supporting us now more than ever. This year has been crazy all the way around for businesses and people and communities alike. And the fact that you are here means the world to us. We wouldn't be here without you. We wouldn't be here for the past 50 years because, believe it or not, it is Tattered Cover's 50th anniversary this year in 2021. And you're the reason that we are able to have such amazing authors, artists, poets, community members come and join us, not just on screen, but also in person. So hopefully we will get back to that later in the year. But thank you for being a part of our virtual community for the past year. I want to let you know that closed captioning for this program is enabled for those who might want it or need it. There's a black bar down at the bottom of the screen with a button labeled CC on it. If you click that button, closed captioning is enabled for those who want it or need it. I also want to let you know that Tattered Cover, for those of you who might be joining us that are outside of the Denver metro area, we are a local independent bookstore who's been around for 50 years. We have 4 locations in the Denver metro area. Right now, 3 of which are open because we're in the middle of moving one, which is very exciting. And that number 4 is soon to be 5. If a lot of you heard the news that we're opening up a new location in Stanley Marketplace. So it's a very exciting time for us with lots of moving parts and lots of things going on. But in the meantime, if you want to visit our open stores, you can come in wearing your mask over your mouth and your nose, and you can come browse for about 90 minutes or so. Or if you're not in the area, you want to just stay shopping in your sweatpants, you can totally do that at tatteredcover.com to serve all your bookish needs. Also on tatteredcover.com is our slew of events. I'm telling you, we have a lot. It's my job, so I'm the one to know. But you should check out our calendar at tatteredcover.com/event. We have so many coming up. And we thank you guys for registering. You could also subscribe to our YouTube channel that you're watching us on right now and watch all the past author events that we've recorded over the last year, which some of them are really amazing. Other artists, graphic novelists are on there as well. If that's your I can't even think of a word. If that's your fancy, there you go. If that's your fancy, there's a lot to watch on there. So we thank you again for joining us. And I'm just going over my housekeeping here. Also, some of you have already been super active in the chat. Thank you for doing that. That is where you're going to be asking your questions for later in the Q&A portion of the event. So keep those questions in mind, and that is where you will be asking them. And now, after all that's done, I want to welcome our 2 guests tonight. We're celebrating Jackie E. Davis's new book, Vulnerability Is My Superpower. And she's going to be in conversation with Jess Thomas tonight. And so a little bit about these 2. Jess Thomas lives in 100 Mile House, BC, and art is her love language. She's best known for making Bird Strips, a 1,000-day comic and drawing project about birds and what it means to be human. Passionate about self-development through creativity, she co-hosts Art Horse, a podcast about making art and stepping out of your comfort zone. You'd love it. It's really good. When Jess isn't at her desk, you'll find her oohing and awing at her local art gallery, knitting everything in sight, or running from her ornery rooster. Ornery, that's how you pronounce that word. Ornery rooster. And Jackie Davis lives in Rochester, New York, with a bunch of happy houseplants, squishy plush toys, and her husband, Pat. He is the exhausted purple character in her comics, and an artist too. Jackie has been drawing chubby things with googly eyes her whole life, much to the disappointment of her art teachers, but now to the delight of the internet and all of us. She discovered comics and her passion for them around 2015 and has been reading, writing, and drawing them ever since, launching her popular webcomic, Underpants and Overbites. She has self-published 2 comics collections, and her 3rd book, Vulnerability Is My Superpower, is out April 2021 with Andrews McMeel Publishing. When Jackie isn't drawing, she enjoys playing outside, finding things on the ground, and peeking in the neighbors' windows in search of new friends. Jackie has yet to win any awards beyond the 8th grade when she got 2nd place for drawing a pair of sneakers, but she's hopeful, as are we. And we're excited tonight to celebrate Vulnerability Is My Superpower. And it's my honor to welcome Jackie Davis and Jess Thomas. So we're going to have them turn on their cameras and their videos. Alrighty, let's see here. Perfect. There's Jess. Hello.
Oh, did I leave again?
I'll explain what happened in just a second here. Here we go. There they are. There's 1 and 2. So really quickly, welcome. Thank you both. I did not mean to just delete Jess out of the conversation there. Your names switched on my little thing because it was like, oh, her camera's on now. So maybe
I clicked something.
Yeah, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Well, thank you for being here. I want to just remind our viewers that active in the chat right now, as you all are, I love how much highs and hellos are being exchanged. So you all can ask questions later after these two talk. And so for now, I'll hand it over to the both of you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Intro I've ever gotten.
I know. Great. Yeah, same. That was really good. Hi, everyone, and hi, Jackie. Official congratulations on this beautiful piece of work that you have made.
Thanks.
This is a gorgeous book. It's got so much stuff that I haven't even seen in it, and I feel like having followed you for a long time, I've watched your comics like change and like develop, and like you're digging deeper, you're bringing out more stuff. So thank you for sharing this. Thank you for sharing this with all of us. I've got some questions about creative process and comics and stuff. And I would say, I don't know, maybe to kick us off, do you want to ground us in the present? Like, what drew you to comics?
Oh, like the present, like what brought me to this?
Yeah, how did you get here to this moment?
Ooh, it's a really long story, but what
abridged. Just sum us up, get us here.
What drew me to comics was, I mean, I had no idea that they really existed, and then Pat told me, like, yo, you got to check out graphic novels, because I was writing in my diary for years, like obsessively, even, you know, like writing to the point where like I'm at a football game with my family, and then my brother's like, are you writing about me? And then I'm like, my brother thinks I'm writing about him. Take away, you know, I just was obsessed with writing a diary, which I am like totally too afraid to read now. I went back to read.
Oh no, you've got to. You've got to. Okay.
Yeah, but and then I was always drawing stuff like puns and weird characters, and then yeah, Pat was like, you got to read graphic novels, because he was more of like an art kid in high school, and I was just more of like a child obsessed with cows and like getting tucked in at a really old age. And I thought graphic novels were all superheroes, and so it took me like 8 years to take his advice, and then I finally read one, and I was just like, this is so cool. I love the clarity that certain authors can bring to a story. Like I don't have a ton of context for existing in like this point in time. You know, when someone is like, this story begins in the Byzantine Empire, I'm like, uh-oh, you know, like but if the story is like, I was 6 when my parents moved, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. And so graphic novels, a lot of them have this really simple entry point, and when I found them, I was completely obsessed with them, and I wanted to write graphic novels, but I couldn't figure out how to even not make the panels touch. And so I decided to start with a webcomic, because it seems like it takes a long time to make money with a graphic novel, or you have to get like an advance. Like I couldn't just write it in my house, and I don't even think I could write one yet. But yeah, I was just obsessed, and I found them, and it was like discovering like a language that I never even knew that I could speak. And all of a sudden I'm like, I'm completely obsessed. So yeah.
Wow. That is so interesting, because when I read your comics, that's how it feels. Like as soon as you hop into the first panel and you're like, I'm there. Like I get it. That's really cool. So then I'm also wondering, I'm just looking at my notes so that I don't forget anything that I want to ask. What is the cycle of an idea for you? Like, what does it look like to like come upon an idea and capture it and develop it into something that like means exactly, like how do you say exactly what you mean to say?
Sometimes it takes like years to say exactly what I want to say. And a cycle for an idea, it can be like a day. You know, sometimes there's like a really funny exchange where most recently I made one where I'm like, but I didn't get all my stuff done. And Pat was like, you never get it all done. And then, you know, he said something, I can't remember it. I'm like totally blanking. But then I just immediately turned that into a comic. And so it was like the gestation period was like 10 seconds. But
Yeah.
I'm working on this comic idea now where I'm trying to like find a swimsuit I'm comfortable in. And it's like I've felt that my whole life. And now I tried to write it, like this discomfort my whole life. This idea of like,
Whoa.
you know, when you're in like the swimming pool and then the snacks are too far away. And then it's I'm like, oh, I want to get the snacks, but like, how many people are going to see me? And I'm just trying to like figure it out. And in the past, I would have tried to write it all in like 8 hours and then just like spun it into this complete mess and then been really sad. And now I usually just like sit down, write exactly what's in my head for an hour, and then I just move on. And all of a sudden, like, it's like it's like a circuit board, and like one circuit will light up, and I'll be like, oh, I have an ending to that swimsuit thing. And then I go back but like I used to be really my early life was very like filled with order, and I was obsessed with like the shoes being the right way and like cleaning out my email inbox and then having everything be like a one-to-one correlation of like I wrote an idea, now it becomes a comic, and now it's like I live in an explosion.
Ooh.
My comics are just like, I don't know. And sometimes I flip through a sketchbook and then I just like throw it to the side of the room and I find something, and then I made a comic, like I'll be in the middle of photoshopping and then I get an idea and then I write it. So basically I just try to write, I like try to just pour it all onto the page and then trust that I'll find it when I need what I'm looking for. But the cycle of an idea is very inconsistent, and it's like I just try to go with the thing that's the brightest because it's going to give me the most momentum to take it from the idea to finish, instead of like sometimes I'll be inking an idea and I'm like, I don't even like this that much. And as soon as I realize it, I have to stop because it's
Whoa.
still, you know, I have to, like we were talking about this earlier, but it's like to get a comic on the internet, you have to like write it and then draw it and ink it and paint it and scan it and break it into, you know, a 4:5 ratio for Instagram and then put it on the internet. And it's like, if I don't really like it on stage one, I'm not gonna get through. And I think my readers are gonna be able to tell that I didn't super like it.
Whoa. Like everything comes through. That's so true that it's such a big job that you don't want to do it for a subpar idea, like a fart joke or something. Although
yeah, it's like payoff. Like what is the payoff? And if it's not even paying off for me in the making process, it's just not worth going through that.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because after all of that work, someone sees it. They're like scrolling through their Instagram and they look at it and they're like, ha, like next. And so it's like, is that, you know, it's an interesting.
Yeah. I remember when I first made comics, someone would be like, I did a comic a week for 2 years and they were like really high rendered. And then someone at the end of 2 years was like, I found all your comics. I read them in 10 minutes. They were great. And I was like, 10 minutes? But
my heart, my soul, 10 minutes.
But I mean, that's the beauty of it, is no one really anchors on it. And like, but it's also this really weird, like this much work is distilled into like a single drop. And that drop can be really powerful, or it could just be like, but it's kind of comforting that you didn't really waste anyone's time. You took like 10 seconds from them.
Yeah. And maybe that's such a difference. Like it definitely feels like a baby step towards a graphic novel where it's like this, it's technically easy to share. It's not like I have to pay a lot of money to share it, or I don't have to invest a lot of time. I get to make something, even if it's a lot of work, and I just get to share it instead of, so on that sort of note of like making stuff, how do you find a balance between like making stuff for yourself and like making stuff for the internet or making stuff for likes? Or like, is there anything that you make and don't share?
I would say most of what I make is basically entirely for myself, and then other people get to read it. But I do censor myself a little bit. Here's one comic that I haven't made, and I don't want to offend anyone, but
Okay.
I have like mice in my house, and I don't know how to get rid of the mice in like a humane way. I bought these little tunnel traps, and the mice aren't having it. And then I've used snap traps, but then they're too gruesome. And I could get a cat because cat eat mice, but then my problem is if I got a cat, it's like then I just have a really big mouse that lives in my house, which is the cat. But then I don't want to like be misunderstood by the internet and how much people love cats. And so then I'm like, okay, this is for me, but also I don't want to hurt the cat people. So I'm probably not gonna make it because it's the internet struggles a lot with nuance. So it's a really fine line about no, I like cats, but it's gonna shred up butter udder. It just comes with like way too much of an explanation. But the idea that a really big mouse could get me like totally roasted on the internet. And so I would love to make it, but then I think about like, and then the payoff, I would have to write like 40 panels to like not get
explain the nuance and like justify yourself and sort of back off from your original stance, like
where I can just write about how much I love dogs in my neighborhood, and everyone's like, "Yay!" And I'm like, "Okay, which one?" But it's worth explaining my experience in a swimsuit because other people, I imagine it's like a very universal feeling instead of people that are like, "You making fun of my cats?" So
divisive.
Yeah, divisive. So sometimes I kind of like cut a concept out where I'm like, "Oh, that's not gonna work." But I would say most of the stuff I make is like, it's really just comic Jackie telling me like what I need to hear. And so it's this really interesting feedback loop, but like a mirror kind of. So I've always made what I love. In like in my bio, it was like much to the disappointment of art teachers. And I mean, I had like maybe a year in there where I fell really into like highly rendered portraits so that like my grandma could be like, wow. Thank you, grandma. Thank you.
Like, I get it. I get this. That other stuff, not so much.
But then I was like, I can't hold it, grandma. And then and then I'm just drawing like lemons, like with pom-poms, and she's like, ah. So yeah, I have like a inability to make things that I don't like. Like, I mean, every once in a while I'll write a comic and be like, I don't think this is my favorite thing ever. And I'm like, what? Like they can't all be my favorite, but I'd make everything with the intention of like, what do I want to read as a person?
And it feels like there's something interesting about that, about like the things that you choose that can be understood by others and where that line is. Because like for, where's the lemons versus this portrait? Like there's a line and it's like the lemons, that's what I'm going to do. But out into the wider world, it's like swimsuit.
Yeah,
like deeper stuff.
Like I can't, it would be silly to convince myself that I make stuff without an audience in mind. Like I certainly make art for clarity, but I, make what I want to make. But yeah, I've definitely had phases that are just puns, and it's like, no one, I mean,
hey, been there, man. It's fine. It's fine. That is a legitimate art form.
Oh, for sure. But your audience could get a little tired. And so I
I mean, you guys let me know.
Yeah, you're right. You do all those.
You did like 3 weeks worth of seagull puns.
I really like the beagle.
Yeah, Teagull. Oh, God. That was one of my favorite stretches in the whole thing. Because it was just such a simple joke. And I feel like there's something about just making art anyway. Like if you, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think readers can feel your joy.
Mm-hmm.
Something.
But if you were like hated puns and you were making puns, people would be able to tell, I think.
No,
Like you
totally.
make puns because you think people want to see them.
Yes, and I think that's a really hard part in an artist's life is making art that you think other people want to see. And I definitely did some of that for a while. Like, I remember I lived in Austin, and it was like, I was like, the life cycle of like a beard if you live in Austin, and it was just like some weird commentary on people with beards, but I just like it didn't resonate with me. I just made it because that's like what was on the internet at the time. Or like I did this really bad, that evolution thing where like
oh yeah.
I did one of like it was like evolution of the hydrogenated cheese snack, and it's like a Cheez-It that then becomes like a Cheeto, and then it becomes like a tall one, and then I was like, who am
I? What am I doing?
What am I trying to say?
Yeah. God, that's such a good question because it's such a difficult trap of like, like feeling like you want to make stuff that you see other people making and you're like, oh, like people are really into like pineapples right now. And as an artist who's trying to make a living, maybe I can make a pineapple thing. Yeah. How do you balance that? Do you find that you do any of that now?
Oh, like the trendy
What is
stuff?
that like? Yeah.
I mean, I try not to. Like, I try to like read a lot of comics and be like, okay, I can't do any like expectation versus reality of.
So no memes.
Yeah, I'm really out of touch like with the internet.
God, same.
I'm kind of like I'm just telling stories that are personal to me, and I sort of made a choice a while ago that was like, I'm just gonna tell stories about where I'm at in my life because I can't compete, and some artists do make like kind of like New Yorker comics, and sometimes I read them, I'm like, that is so funny. But I'm just like not my comics
Not
are
one
like,
panel black and white.
yeah, they're not a one panel black and white, but they're like a real reflection of my life. And I think some artists like they find like a niche that then they work in, and then you meet them in real life and you're like, oh, you're not quite who I expected. This, but I feel like I really bring all of the assets and the deficits to the table, and people, you don't make you don't have pop culture in your comics, like it makes it relatable. I'm like, that's because I don't know anything, like
that's because I don't consume that, really.
I'm like, is that the guy from Indiana Jones? And Pat's like, just stop, just
no.
But I mean, I try not to get caught up in it because I want to make original stuff, but then I don't have this like, I'm not under this illusion of like what I make is really original. It's like if it was original, no one would understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to identify feelings inside of myself that maybe other people haven't acknowledged in themselves until they see it on paper.
Yeah. And I think when I read your book, there's a couple of this type of comic in there that are like 20, like some of my favorite things are like 20, I don't remember what it was, but it was like 20 elated, you wouldn't have said elated probably, but 20 good feelings, 20 of the best. And it's just like very human and very specific. Like one of your favorite things is like the tiny bumps on a child's new teeth. Or like things that feel really good is like when something good happens to a character I love. And then you read that and like it roots into your own life. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, but like you might not have known it before, but then everyone knows what the little bumps on the teeth are. And then you're like, whoa, I didn't notice before.
Yeah. So much of your work seems to be about noticing, like outside and inside.
Totally.
And that makes it really special. Yeah.
And that kind of comes back to that, like, who am I? Like, what kind of art am I making? Because I feel like every artist goes through a phase of like making art about making art. Like a comic about how you don't have any comic ideas is like, itself, you're like, oh yeah, what are we, 2-year benchmark? Okay.
Yeah. Here it comes. You ready?
And then there's just this, different phases, and I feel like I'm in this really cool phase of like sort of letting go and just
Letting
loosening,
go of.
just letting go of like, am I a comic artist? Am I funny? Will people like what I make? And then it's just like, just throw it all away and just draw. And what kind of story am I going to draw? And that's where I'm at now. And it's like, it feels so freeing. And I mean, you ask me in a week, I might be like, who am I?
I said that? Oh my God. And I feel like that sounds very liberating, like to get to that point where you're just making stuff that is of yourself. I feel like maybe sometimes that's the hardest part for a lot of people that I talk to, is like actually putting that down on paper, even opening a sketchbook and drawing. Is there do you have any words of wisdom or advice or consolation for anybody who is like wanting to make more art or wanting to represent themselves on a page?
My consolation got lots of that, which is, whoa, good luck. I applaud you, and I can't wait to see what you make. My advice is, you just have to draw your way out of every problem. And it's like, I mean, not every problem, sometimes you got to go to bed. But like, if you don't know where your art, it's weird. It's like, it's almost like in drawing my comics, I've drawn myself a map through which I can like see more of my life.
What do you mean?
Sounds totally like, I don't know, man. No, but
Tell
it's
me
like,
what that means.
It's like I started in the woods and I just was like, I don't know what's happening. And then I just kept like drawing, and then it just spread. It's these mixed metaphors. That's like one of my biggest things I got to watch out for when I write a comic. I'm like, oh, we're in the ocean and now we're moving rocks, Jackie.
We're in a plane.
Slow down. You just got to leap and the frying pan will appear. And then I'm like, oh,
what am I? Who am I?
What have I done? But like, I feel like I the drawing, I made a comic a long time ago that was like, I'm in the dark and my pencil is a tiny flashlight and it's showing me the way. And it's like this, I don't know, like making art is so hard, but it's so easy. And it's this like, you just have to sit down and do it. But
there it is. That's the hard part.
It's
there it is. That's
the part where it's like, you got to draw your way out of it. But like, I do remember, and this is like, I'll probably become one of those like visiting teachers that always says the same story over and over again. The students are like, stop, you dinosaur.
God.
But, when I found comics and I was like, I have to do this with my life. Like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I didn't like anything that I drew because everyone was better than me. Everything was amazing. And I just, got caught up looking at other people's stuff. And so it was like a way to trick my brain. I just said, I'm going to draw for 15 hours a week, no matter what it is, for like a year. And so I drew for 15 hours, but sometimes I'd draw like bubble letters or like, when you're on call with a telemarketer and you just draw like poofy things and, and then you give them like 3 dimensions or whatever. I'd do that for like 15 hours. And then over time, I'd be like drawing more characters and the people I worked with in coffee shops. And then eventually I just didn't keep a timer anymore because I felt like, I don't know, I was like out of shape. And then I got more in shape. And then I'm like, oh, I kind of get it. And I mean, then I got shingles because I worked too hard. There's all kinds of things. But my advice is just like, you just have to draw, like, and turn off your phone. And you know what? Like, don't think about it all the time. Just like, for me, the challenges really helped me when I would be like, I'm going to make 30 comics in 30 days. And then for 30 comics, I mean, you made 1,000 comics in 1,000 days. It's like, you just got to make it. But then afterwards, you can look at what you learned and you're like, oh, cool. I mean,
like so much.
A lot.
I mean, yeah. But like 30, I feel like you could learn a sizable lesson. You could learn a sizable lesson in a week. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it's uh-oh.
She's back.
We're in trouble.
Wait, everyone can see you too, right? It's not like we're talking to a ghost.
No, you're good.
Okay.
I only popped in because we're going to move on to audience questions soon, but you can finish that thought, so you're good. I forget what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're just too scared of the teacher.
I've never wanted to be a teacher. Okay, well, that being said, we can move on to audience Q&A that we have here. I feel like that the two of you, I just enjoy listening to the both of you talk, and it feels so natural between the two of you that, no, it's true, because, and Jackie, your willingness to be vulnerable. So the question I want to, not just in this interview, but in your art as well. So I want to ask you about the title of your work to kick us off, and then encourage our audience members to ask questions in the chat. But could you talk more about the title of your book?
Yeah, so I was thinking about the title, and it would be like comics to help people feel good or something like that. And then my editor was like, what about vulnerability is my superpower? And I was like, that's terrible. And then and then like a week later, I like tried to make up a better one, and I was like, all right, you win, I'll go with that. And then I felt like I was just using his idea, but then I realized I'd made a comic where the first panel is vulnerability is my superpower, and then she says, I'm so strong I don't need to pretend I'm strong, and that helps other people share. And then at the end someone's like, oh, she used to have a V on her shirt, and then someone's like, for vulnerability, and then it's like, your V fell off and I can see your underwear, and then my character's like, no. But I was delighted that the title was
from your actual work. Like, you're like, what a terrible idea.
And it was my own idea, and then I was like, that's pretty good. And then for the cover, I pretended that the cover was just a sketch because it was like too much. I was like, I'm just gonna whip this thing up, and if they like it or not, whatever. And then I sent it in, and they were like, looks great, we're running it. And I was like, ha, I tricked my brain.
Brilliant.
But you keep saying trick your brain, and I love that you're using that in the sense of to combat like your inner saboteurs. RuPaul says your anxiety, your critic, your inner critic. But I love that you say it that way because it A, makes it feel like an accomplishment, and B, makes it feel like you are in control of it. You're the Loki of your own brain. You know what I mean? That you can wrap around it somehow, and I love that. Wow. I want to ask this one. This one's from Instagram, actually. Jess said that she had this one was, what is it like to be the subject of your own comics, and how do you keep drawing yourself fresh each time?
It's hard to answer this and not sound like an egomaniac, I think. But
no, just do it.
I love it. I honestly like, it's just this language that I completely understand, and my character is like, I keep it fresh because really, like, when I draw, I'm just poking her and I'm moving her around, and then I'll be like, yeah, it's time to dance, and then she's dancing on the page, and she's like playing back when I draw. So I absolutely love it. And I also love this like loophole where I'm the narrator and the character. So when I make a comic, the narration can go across the top, or she can kind of interact with her own narration. Like, it's like, wow, today I had a good day, and then she'll be like, woo. I'm like, yeah, thanks, Jackie. Like, thanks for having my back. And so it's really just play, and it's so playful. And I also have this, like, I don't know if my brain has a special piece in it that helps me like be obsessed with the same thing over and over again, but I loved cows for like 15 years, and so I think I've just moved on to comics. But I remember when I was a kid, they were like, if you want to be a cartoonist, you're gonna have to draw the same thing over and over again. And I was like, perfect.
This was made for me.
The only problem is, like, I draw her more often facing to the right, and so then sometimes when I draw her to the left, she's like, whoa! And I'm like, okay, Jackie, come on, you got to do it. Like, you got to
get it together.
Yeah. About face, Jackie. About face. Turn.
Oh, and then like 3/4 angles, like the eyeballs, like on the like
Oh
if
no.
she's reading her phone and you want to see what she's reading, I'm like, okay.
News.
I'm enjoying the insider's view of it as somebody who like I love art, studied art, love comics, can't do it. Like I can't draw to save my life. That's my sister's talent. But I love getting this insider look to it. And I'm curious as to, for both of you, you know, what were the comics that first got you started, that first got you interested, that made you want to take that leap and be like, hey, maybe I can do this. You know what I mean? Because I love comics, but I never had one that triggered that for me. And both of you being artists, what was that a comic that triggered it? Jackie, I'd love it if you could start first.
Yeah, I read Blankets by Craig Thompson, and it's this beautifully done like brush. You got it? You got it right over there?
I might have it. Keep talking.
But it's this incredible brush pen comic, and it's all about his experience growing up in the church and then like falling in love and you know, with his first girlfriend essentially. And I don't want to spoil it if anyone hasn't read it, because you know, you might have that spark too. But that was the first graphic novel I read.
I realize I have Habibi by him, not Blankets. Oops, wrong one, but still, please keep going.
I got it back there in my cabinet. I think it's right over there.
There.
But yeah, it was like, it was so honest, and there was this level of like honesty about his inner thoughts, but like nothing about it was like something to be ashamed of. It was just incredible. It's like giving me chills to think about if I could ever make anything like Blankets. And so to me, that was Blankets. And then before that, I was like raised on The Simpsons all day, every day. And I also loved The Far Side. And when Gary Larson would draw like roaches at like cocktail parties and stuff, I was like, yeah.
Hey.
This guy gets me. He's probably like 45, but he like totally gets me. Oh, what about you, Jess?
You know, I'm not sure. I didn't really consume any graphic novels. I think I read some Archie comics, but I wasn't super into like that kind of thing. And I think as an adult, like my whole thing is like I was on a trip around the world and I had nothing to do. As silly as that sounds, and I just started drawing. And I think the thing that made me start drawing was I saw False Knees, actually, perhaps obviously, and I was like, if one day I could draw like that, like I will have made it. And I kind of started in a similar way, but in my mind became very different. Some people don't see the difference, but to me it's very different work than Josh's work. But yeah, so I'd say that would be my answer.
Thank you both for that. And that way also people who love your work and have connected with yours can maybe expand out into other ones if they hadn't heard of those previously. So thank you for those recommendations. One I love. Yeah, what's up, Jackie?
All right, I was just gonna say, Jess, like you, I've read a tremendous amount of like Funny Pages comics and like Archie comics and things that I just like, that didn't resonate with me. And when I found diary comics, I was like, oh, like the clarity is outrageous, you know, because there was a lot of like a detective and then like a Spider-Man comic that I like hadn't been following for the past 10 years. And then when I found this, that's what it was. It was like a spark where I was like, oh, it's like being at a concert and hearing it in a different language, and all of a sudden it's like in English. And I was like, yes.
Wow.
But go on.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's so cool.
My God, that makes sense, because like Betty and Veronica like don't really relate to them, you know? Like it's not as personal. They have teenage years that I don't understand. Could not relate to that.
And a body I never could ever. So,
yeah.
So this one here, and this one I think, Jackie, you can interpret it how you like, because it might end up being like picking your favorite child or something. But do you have a favorite comic in the book? And Jess, I'd love to know if you have one as well.
In the book, I can't even remember what I made. Oh, like looking through it. You know, I don't like
That's
sometimes
okay.
I'll make a comic and I'll be like, Jess, what's yours? Oh, I thought you were
Don't.
showing me.
Okay, so looking through these, like, there's so many that, because I was saying at the very beginning, like, watching your comics develop, like, this feels like such a personal one that is like newer and like really hit me, I guess. Like, there's this, it's very specific. It's about you being two people.
Oh,
I'm not
yeah.
one person, I am two people, one body fighting for the same space. And like I'll just read just for a second. One person is sure of herself and the other person, oh, she's confident, determined, unapologetic. She fights for what she wants. The other person is none of those things. And like the conclusion, like just sort of, it's very specific as you go through it. And then the conclusion is like, I won't say it because that would spoil it, wouldn't it? But it's like, it's just such a special thing. Like it feels very true and honest and real to me and rich. And there's a lot of them like that in there. Like, especially the ones with you in the dark with watercolor are gorgeous. I'm not going to spoil this one, but like, look at that. Like, look at these flashlights. How did you even do that? That's gorgeous. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
I like, sometimes I look at a comic and I remember where I made it, and I like, my aunt was out of town, so I went to her house because she has air conditioning, and I like made it on her floor. And like, I see a comic and it like reminds me of where it came from. But the two people comic, it's so wild because like reading some of my old work, I can't even access the mental state I was in when I made it, and I'm like, dang, that Jackie's really sad, you know, I'm so different. But I was thinking about what advice I would have for people making art, and it's like, don't go looking for sad things to make art about, because sad things will happen anyway. And so right now I'm just in like a kind of at peace phase, but I'm not worried that it's gonna last forever.
It's coming back.
Yeah, like it's set my timer, it's coming for me. And so I'm just gonna enjoy it instead of like, let me self-sabotage so I can be a better artist.
Oh my God. But like writing art about happy things. How? I guess that's your like, these are a few of my favorite things. I guess that's a happy thing.
There you go. Those are happy things. Listing off your favorite.
Like, where do you put that stuff?
Where do you put like unbridled joy, where you're just like, I don't know. You know what? You can also use that happiness to edit the things you wrote when you were sad. So balance them out.
Yeah, like a little retrospect.
And then you're like, dang, Jackie, like that is not the ending anyone wants to read.
Yeah, come on, bring it up, lady. Come on.
So I've got a couple more questions here before we end here, but I love this one. Jackie, if your life was a Crayola box, what color would you use to describe your childhood? Are you a new or different color now?
Whoa.
You know that thing I said about the superficial questions? I have to quickly say, very quickly, before we jumped on this, Jess was worried her questions were going to be too deep. And I was like, no, we'll leave the superficial questions to the audience. No, now we're getting into your childhood and what color you are. So maybe Jess did set the tone.
Thanks, guys.
For deeper questions.
Ooh, yeah. Oh man, that is, you know, I do doodles in my books, and people are like, they can ask, you know, make it out to my nephew, he's 10. And then someone asked me to make a doodle out to myself as a child. And I was like,
okay.
And I did, and it was amazing. And then I'm gonna do a comic, but that crayon question is that's a lot. And I mean, I guess I'll avoid it by being like, it wasn't one color, but I would say it was like a beautiful color on the inside and a very sad color on the outside, because I always knew who I was, but I couldn't be that person. And now it's the same color all the way through, whatever color that is that you interpret. in your mind. It's not really,
Whoa.
you know,
Maybe it's a different color each day too.
That's
yeah,
beautiful.
right. It's not like she's dead. Here I am, world. But I feel like a much more solid entity throughout my existence. Which
Or, I ripped that paper up a long time ago.
So I have to apologize. I'm someone wants to know, can we see Butter Udder?
I actually thought someone might ask. So also, she's just been waiting.
Oh,
Hey,
hello. Look at her. Aw.
See, this is the one thing about virtual
Cute.
events that are the most amazing is the show and tell. That's awesome.
hey, Butter Udder, come on. We're in camera.
We got the under the tail look. Thank you.
Oh, and she's got little bows on her giant heavy feet. So.
She's wearing shoes.
She's a ballerina.
What?
I found this. My mom sent me like the tag from when she bought me Butter Udder. I had a mini Butter Udder, and then she was like, "Oh, honey, I found like she
A
worked."
big one.
Yeah, she was like, "I saw a big one on my way to work," and I was like, "Get it for me." And she was like, "Okay, whatever," and then I got it. I was like, "You must get it." And then I got it for Christmas, and I was like, "Butter Udder," and I just made up the name, but my mom sent me the original tags, and Butter Udder's real name is Cletus.
Jesus.
She's been having a real tough time being
One color on the inside and another color on the outside.
Butter Udder. You're really a Cletus on the inside.
Oh my, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to ask my last question after that. I am beat red. I love it. Well, we are going to dip back a little bit into the deeper area. Sorry, y'all. But this is something we love to ask as our last question here at Tattered Cover because it always brings up fascinating answers. So interpret it as you will, and it is for both of you. For Jess, you as the reader of this comic, and you, Jackie, as the artist. But what did this book, Vulnerability is My Superpower, teach you? And Jess, I'd love it if you could start, and then we could end with our artist of the hour.
What did it teach me? I guess it made me feel inspired about like writing and drawing what's inside me, because I come at things from an art perspective, and like that's what I care about. So that's what I found in it, and yeah, I just feel inspired by reading it, and I feel, I don't know, glad to know you. That's how I feel. That wasn't the question. That's how I feel.
No, I think it works. I love that also interpretation of what you found in it. I like that too.
All right, Jackie, lay it on us.
Okay, well, the easy one is just that everyone is copying everyone else. Like, when you lay a book out, you're like, what's a book look like? And you're like, oh, it's got a cover. And then, you just pull it out and you're like, how many pages? We got to put one of those number things on it. So I felt really fortunate that I'd self-published 2 books before this one because, my editor, Lucas, was like, hey, we're going to need an artist, an author bio or whatever. And I could just write it and send it over without being like, what's going to happen? And so that part was really cool. Like, it's all just made up and it all gets put together and then it becomes a thing. But what it taught me sounds like kind of sad, I guess, but people really want to read what I make. And I remember when this came in the mail, literally my first thought is, who's going to want to read this?
Oh.
And then as I get more distance from it, I'm like, hey, this is pretty good.
It is a beautiful collection. Like, this is such a gorgeous book that you've made.
But it kind of, thank you. I'm trying to hear the compliments, but it kind of taught me there's no council of people that say if you're an artist or not. And it taught me hey, you make art and people want to read it. And so make more art. And I've been on a long journey of getting enough external validation to fill some weird hole inside of myself. And I've definitely learned that no one can fill it but me, and
Damn it.
decide to hear what people are saying. So
Yeah, wow. I think that's something that a lot of artists watching needed to hear, myself included. Jess, I'm sure you thank you. Thank you both. And thank you, Jess, for asking wonderful questions and bringing out those great answers. Jackie, thank you for, again, the vulnerability in your answers and in your book and in your art. And, you know, I know that you might not hear it now, but we are excited and happy to have read and are to read for some people who are still waiting for their copies in the chat, as they're saying, and they're very excited to read it. We're all very behind you and behind this book. So thank you. I want to, before we close out, I want to give each of you a chance to remind people who you are, where they can find you online, and maybe anything else that you want to say before we close out. And Jess, again, I'll ask you to start. We'll end with our artist of the hour, Jackie Davis, today.
Okay. I'm Jess. I make bird strips, and you can find me on Instagram at bird strips. I also co-host a podcast called Art Horse, and it's awesome. It's about stepping out of your comfort zone and making art. Yeah, give it a listen. You can find it at arthorsepod.com or anywhere you get podcasts. And that's me.
And Jackie?
I'm Jackie Davis, and I make underpants and overbites, and you can find it on Instagram at underpants and overbites, and then on Facebook if you're into that, but Facebook's hard and I got locked out on my phone, so now I got to upload from my desktop. And Twitter, I'm on Twitter, but it's underpants but it sounds like underpants sand. And
no, that's way worse.
Not getting a lot of traction there. And I have a website that's like basically a ruin that I've been trying to update for like 2 years, but I always have some other project to work on. And I'm like, I just can't format these files. But you can also, this is a very fresh and alive place, is Underpants and Overbites on Patreon. And you can read usually an extra comic a week. And it's only $3 a month. And you get to help pay for Butter Utter's thread that stitches her up. So
keeping her alive.
And in other ways that you can support Jackie are getting copies of Vulnerability Is My Superpower at tattercover.com or at any of our locations. We thank you both so much for joining us. We thank you, everybody, for watching this evening. If you two will stick around while I close this out here. For some of you out there, it might be dinner time right now, so we encourage you to support a local restaurant, maybe mom and pop shop. We local businesses here would not be here without you, and we cannot thank you enough for your support, for putting your money into your community, and supporting artists, you know, really giving them validation through payment for what they do, because art is not free and it is obviously not easy, as we have seen tonight. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for getting Vulnerability Is My Superpower. Stay safe, everybody. Happy reading. Thanks all.